Beneath the surface of any capable build with a modern engine swap that hasn't been setting its brakes on fire through the last 7 corners is, in my experience, seat time. No, I'm not talking about the kind of greasy seat time your bros get on a Friday night in the drive-thru before hitting the local stance meet. I'm talking about replacing that grease with sweaty palms and tires that tend to stay hot for longer than 30 seconds. Real seat time that builds what? Longevity. This is Joe's VW Mark II Golf with 14 years of that. And okay, maybe a couple pit stops at the meets as well. Okay, alright. Here is Joseph's Mark II Golf VR6 swap. Not only is it VR6 swap, it's got a centrifugal supercharger on it. Anytime in the past I've driven a boosted VR6, well, first off, Tyler's Corrado, I'll never forget, back in 2016 was the very first boosted VR6 I drove. It was a single turbo VR6, and it completely, that car single-handedly changed my mind on what a VR6, on what a classic analog Euro car could be with a bunch of power and amazing boost noises. So Joe has taken his car in a completely different route. He actually bought this car and it already had the Corrado VR6 swapped into it, but it was like cap and rotor, old school. So really limited tuning possibilities there. And then what he did is he swapped in an OBD2 VR6 with coil packs, so he can actually stick the supercharger on there and have a, really a car that has super linear torque. We'll find out how it feels in a second here. But yeah, let's go for a drive. It's kind of like BMW M. It's kind of like BMW M. The golden age, some would argue, please argue with me in the comments. Some would argue that this is not the case, but I feel like the golden age of VW has also passed. Wow. Super sensitive throttle, which is a good thing on the downshift. That's gonna take me a little bit to get used to. Probably still weighs somewhere right around 2,700 pounds. Now what Joe's also done here is he's replaced the factory steering rack with a fresh OEM rack. .6,000 RPM. Wow, that pull is relentless. Yeah, that's no joke. That is no joke. It kind of catches you off guard. There's no boom, shove in your face turbo kick. But it's not like a supercharged like recently. Yesterday, I drove Adam from Van City Audi, his 3.0 V6 supercharged Audi S4. And that was the same, kind of a very linear power band, but you don't get the sound. Those V6s just do not sound the way this VR6 does. The VR6 is such a unique engine. The third gear pull is ridiculous. The third gear pull, like 110K to 160K is one gear, and it just happens so effortlessly.
The color of the car, the cage, and the taillights are the only things that are left on the car that are from when I originally purchased it. The car was actually built back in '95 by a local shop owner who is no longer around, and I purchased the car in 2008 from another owner that was a business partner of his. Since then, it's had a VR6 OBD2 swapped into it, a supercharger added, the whole interior has been redone, full exhaust, suspension, the front end, the wheels. So essentially everything's been touched or redone at some point over the course of the years, and I've just kind of added my touches to it. I mean, at the end of the day, I haven't done any body work on the car per se. Like the car was resprayed Porsche Polar Silver back in '95, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, if you look closely, it does have its flaws. It does have its dings, its scratches, its, you know, misalignment here and there. But for being sprayed way back then, I think it's in pretty good shape. I don't like having a show quality build just because it kind of deters you from driving it. The Turbo VR6, as to add to your point, is a common swap that most guys do, and I did want to go down that route just to have that little extra power, a little bit more fun, and obviously the more turbo noises, the better. But the supercharger popped up locally for sale. It's not uncommon, but no one local to me had one at the time. So I thought going a different route and just kind of standing out a little bit differently. I like it. It's just the linear power band, drivability, the enjoyment, the whine, the whole 9 yards. This one has a silencer in it, so it doesn't have the high pitch supercharger whine. But when I do rebuild the charger, I'm definitely going to take that out, and it's probably going to pierce some ears, but that's fine.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's that second, third kick. That is huge. It feels like it has boost by gear. It almost feels like there's more of a pull in third gear than second gear. I mean, Joe, once you get this on the dyno, I would not be surprised if you see upwards of 330, 340 pound-feet. It's not so much the peak power that's here. Really light steering. No throttle coming out of a corner, you better hold on. There's a little bit of torque steer. Fighting torque steer on the way out of the corner. In lightweight front wheel drive VWs is like, it's really part of their charm. It's really part of their charm. On paper, terrible. On paper, just not a good attribute, driving dynamic that you want to experience. But it works. CAE shifter here. Really notchy. This takes a long time to get used to. Makes you feel, you know, it puts you even more so into this old school kind of perspective, the nostalgic, gritty kind of feel that this car looks like from the outside. It's got a huge cage behind me. Joe's been smart enough to put a little bit of a street fire suppression system behind me. Gives me a little bit more peace of mind. These streamlined mirrors, they are not helping with the undeniably terrible aerodynamics of the Mark II Golf, but a good aesthetic choice. He's got the rotiform wheels on there as well. He's recently redone the front bumper.
The motor is a blueprint rebuild. It's not upgraded in any way, shape, or form. Essentially, it's an OEM rebuild minus the pistons, which were fine at the time, so I kind of left it. Regular maintenance, like your brakes, steering rack, everything's been touched just so for my peace of mind. Brand new suspension. It did have a lowering cup kit on it, and now it's on coilovers. So little key things that I've always wanted to do, I was able to do over the course of time. And that's kind of where the path of the build on this car has gone from when I bought it to where we are today. It's definitely been a long process of where it is today, and it's still not complete, but is it ever complete with project cars? I think the best way to explain it is that if you drive a new car versus an old car, or older car I should say, the older cars are more raw and you feel your drive experience more, whereas the new cars have a completely different element of, there's so many working components and electronics that kind of play into your factor of your drivability, whereas an older car, you're the one that's controlling what's going to happen and what won't happen. You can actually feel the speed versus the newer cars. I've noticed when you drive them, you could go at a high speed and you don't realize you're going at a high speed because it's so comfortable, and you look down, and when you look at the speedo is when you realized, oh crap. So
now Joe's had this car for a very long time. I can respect that. I think that's one of the coolest things. Ooh, nice pops on the overrun there. I think it's one of the coolest things and most respectable things, especially here in the Instagram age, where people have such short attention spans and get carried away with builds, get bored with builds so incredibly fast, and then they're just moved on to the next thing, which you know is fine, but there is something to be said about the longevity of a build like Joe's, where you know the car like no one else, and you've just kind of accidentally become an expert on a supercharged VR6 Mark II. If there's a guy to go to and ask about their experiences with the car, it's Joe, at least in my world.
will I build other cars? Absolutely, but this is the one car that'll always stay stable through the entirety of it. A lot of people do classify it as a show car in their conversations to me, but I built it mainly to drive it and enjoy it, and if it got rock chips, it got rock chips. If it got hit, it got hit. It is what it is. It's definitely made some very long trips, and knock on wood, it's never left me stranded. It's made it from the lower mainland here to Kelowna a handful of times. It's gone all the way to Leavenworth in Washington, Whistler a handful of times. A local friend of mine here was selling his car, and I was able to grab this rally front end setup from him and finally got it on the car. It's not something a lot of people run, but there is a handful of guys local to me that do have them, and I was lucky enough to get my hands on this setup right here, and this is the newest addition to the car. The things that are left to do that I'd like to finish up is just a simple audio setup, and then do flat door cards with like a GT3 RS style pull strap. And this is kind of like down the road pipeline, but to make it an all-wheel drive. A couple of the local guys do have VR6 all-wheel drives, but they're turbo. So it'd be cool to have the first VR6 supercharged all-wheel drive locally. So
easy clutch for the street. Again, this isn't a big power build. This is a well-rounded build here. You know, you're only really fighting torque steer on the exit of corners. In a straight line, I'm not really experiencing like a huge pull to one side. The car's really forgiving, steering weight's up, really nice in the corners actually. And you guys, this is a pump gas build. This is a pump gas build. This is not a E85 car. You don't have to go and get special gas for it. Doesn't have any of those compromises. Like, I mean, I'm tapping the throttle the smallest amount, and I can hop from 3,000 RPM to 47 in the flick of a switch. I mean, more responsive than most other VR6s that I've ever driven. I hate to say it. Kind of feels like I'm just always like the boost is constantly rolling on. That's what it feels like. And here, let's look at the boost gauge. Let's find out. Is that accurate? That's only 3 PSI, 4 PSI maybe? Wow. So, thanks guys for watching. Hit me up on Instagram at Roads Untraveled and subscribe if you haven't already. VR6 jet tags and a bunch of other cool designs we've got on our website. If you want to check those out, the link is in the description. So we'll see you soon.